thanks so much for joining. This is Chris Bovin. I'm from Jacksonville Public Library, and this is the April meeting of the Library Marketing Book Club. So really appreciate everybody joining. Hope everybody that had a chance to read the book is ready to talk about it today. And folks that haven't had a chance, you're still going to learn and have some fun and get some good ideas, surely, and get that much more excited about reading the book. So we've got a lot of people today, which is so great. So usually we go through and we do introductions, but I don't know if we have time for that today. So if you are new, how about this? If it's the first time here or you want to say, hey, go ahead and write it in the chat. Or if you just want to write there, even if you've been here before, if you want to write where you're from and what you do there, that would be awesome. So go ahead and write it in the chat. We'll get rolling. So this month, our book was Library Marketing and Communications, Strategies to Increase Relevance and Results by Cordelia Anderson. So one of our own as the library industry. So it's awesome to have Cordelia here. Cordelia has more than 20 years of experience creating marketing and communication strategies for highly visible public organizations. As you read in the book, lots of great experiences. She was, for a decade, she was Director of Marketing and Communications for Charlotte Mecklenburg Library, as I remember on her second trip through that library. She implemented many innovative marketing communication strategies that earned her team something we would all love, the Library Journal Marketer of the Year Award and 2 John Cotton Dana Awards. Cordelia runs a consulting company now, so she works with public and academic libraries and other organizations with all this awesome advice. So thank you so much for joining us, Cordelia. We're so excited to have you here. If you just want to maybe give us a couple minutes just to kind of tell us your experience writing the book and anything else that you'd like to share.
Sure. Well, thank you for that really warm introduction. I appreciate all of you guys coming out today. And I like seeing my friends from the industry and some familiar names as well as some new names. So thank you all for being here. I'll just quickly say that the sort of genesis for this book for me was the Library Marketing and Communications Conference, where I saw some of you guys in 2018, where I was lucky enough to be part of the president's keynote address. And we were doing kind of a Q&A, talking back and forth, myself and Jennifer Burke, about some of the challenges with library marketing. And I saw all these heads nod. And I spoke to so many people at the conference who really wanted to implement so many of the strategies that Jennifer and I spoke about and other things that came up in the breakout. But one of the biggest issues that came up again and again, and that I had heard for years and years and years at conferences, was that we want to do these things, but we don't have the support that we need at our libraries to do it. And there are a few libraries, a lucky few, where they really do have that really great marketing and communication support. And I think my library at various times was that, and that let me do a lot of fun things. But at a lot of libraries, people were just really struggling because their organization didn't understand what marketing and communications really is. And so I wanted to write a book, not necessarily for just the marketing and communications people, but really for library directors, to help them understand why this is important and how it really connects to the library's bottom line, and I know we don't think of libraries necessarily as in the same way we do a for-profit business. So our bottom line isn't profits, but our bottom line is really, people served, community made better, which means more people using services coming in the door, coming to programs, et cetera, et cetera. And so, I think libraries lose sight of that sometimes. And, another theme throughout my career was always like, why do we spend so much time marketing programs when our library does so many other things? And this constant internal push-pull about that as well. And I remember being at various roundtables at conferences, again, over the years, where this topic would come up and was such a source of frustration. The other thing I noticed over many years was how different library systems who might have the same size budget or similar size budget and similar number of branches would have vastly different sized marketing and communications departments and budgets. So you might have a large urban library system that has 10 people and another one that has one. And so just like every library is unique and different, and every state has different ways of setting up their libraries, every community has different ways of funding their libraries, every library has different ways of resourcing their marketing and communications. And it, again, I think it comes down to the understanding and valuing of marketing and communications. And so I really wanted to help connect that, how marketing and communications affects the library's overall success. And so when I originally was writing it, I was like, I'm writing this for library directors. And my editor was like, don't, leave out your peers too, because, they may already know a lot of this, but they'll want to take this in too. So I broadened it a little bit, but I definitely, my hope was, and I hope for all of you, that after you read it, you hand it to your library director, because that I had them in mind when I wrote it. So that's, in short, kind of where the book came from and what I was thinking about when I wrote it.
That's great, Cordelia. Something that I thought was really interesting, just overall with the book, was that that you were writing it, obviously, as COVID was happening. So, what was that like? Making, because I imagine you started writing it a little earlier than that. I'm sure you didn't start writing it in March of last year, and but then got it into COVID. So, what was that? What was that like? How did that change what you wrote?
Well, it's funny because there's a little bit of a lag with working with a big publisher or a publisher like ALA Editions. So I had actually finished, I think, the draft right before COVID. I want to say maybe it was like January or February. Yeah. So it was on the horizon, but we just didn't really have a clue what the impacts were going to be. But I was able, upon a final revision, to like work that in really quickly, just a short, mention of it. But I was really relieved because a lot of the content I felt like lent itself to the COVID situation. So talking about crisis communications, talking about advocacy as it relates to local funding, when in many communities, local funding became a challenge during COVID because of reduced revenues and things like that, as well as the relevancy issue. And so as I'm thinking about my second book, I want to talk more about how to get people physically using the library again, but to think of that in a more perennial way. So not just post-COVID, but just in general, how do we, how can we use the principles of marketing to get people physically using the library again after, a year of not, and them learning new behaviors that don't include the library in many cases. Yeah. So that, I think, is the next wave. But for this first book, again, like my first thought went to, oh gosh, there's going to be funding issues in some communities, and that can really be an issue. And so the advocacy chapter was something that I drew from, and then wrote several blog posts and a white paper about that because of what I had been through in the past. But as well as the other strategy, having a general communications plan, is knowing who your audiences are is really important when you have to communicate that you're suddenly closing, right? So a lot of those principles, I think, hopefully for you guys, you feel as well, translated over and then translated into a lot of the training I was doing at the same time.
Yeah, definitely. That's great. Thank you so much for going over that, Cordelia, and giving us that look into how it was created. That's so cool. Which LMCC 2018, was that in St. Louis? Was that one of the St. Louis?
Yeah.
I got the flu right before that started, so was not able to make it to that one. But that's awesome. I'm so glad that you got this together, because this has just been a wonderful book, and I don't want to, take up the meeting myself. So I will throw it out to the group. Who has questions, comments, any feedback, or any thoughts about the book that you want to share?
Yeah, I would love to hear feedback. I haven't gotten a whole lot of direct feedback from the library industry. My dad read it and he gave me feedback, but he doesn't work in the industry. So,
I'll jump in.
Yeah, Angela.
I thought it was so refreshing to read something that was specifically for library marketing. I think I've read almost every book that we've read so far for the book club. And so it was so great to like read something that wasn't like, well, this is really for like corporate situations, or this is really for other nonprofits. It's been especially helpful for me because I don't have a marketing background or a library background. I just sort of fell into my position. I started part-time. I'm a bookstagrammer, and I'm at a small library, and they kind of loved what I was doing kind of in my personal life on social media. And so I've kind of just like jumped into this position and jumped into it in the middle of a pandemic. And so it's been really nice to, I don't know, kind of get up to speed. Not that I have had I have done lots of other kind of marketing in different situations. But so it's been super helpful for me. I said in the group that I could do a book club on one chapter a month for this book. Right. I'm like halfway through. I'm like, well, I kind of feel like I'm just like rushing through this book, and I really need to like read a chapter and then apply it, and then read another chapter and then apply that part. And so I really love the book. It has been super helpful. I know when I first received it in the mail, I was like, this book's kind of thin, but it packs a punch. I would say it's succinct, which I also really appreciate as well. So.
Yeah, that's great, Angela. Yeah. And so, yeah, Cordelia, I mean, I'm sure you have the same experience of reading other marketing books. And I know we know there are a few library marketing books out there too, but yeah. So yeah, I thought that was really cool. I think that was good. Anybody else have other comments or questions? Kate?
I also thoroughly enjoyed this book. I haven't had a chance to read it all. I went to the library marketing conference in 2017 and had a similar experience. It's like, especially people who are marketers coming to a library, we always had to apologize. I'm not a librarian, and I thought, why are we doing that? And so it was just really, really, your whole introduction, I was like, that's me. So I really, thank you. I was able to relate to you right away. And actually, I kind of went straight to the end of the book. And reason why is that that was the issue that I was dealing with. So I really appreciated how this book, you could skip to, the direct issue you want to learn more about. And then the marketing stuff was a little bit of a review, but since I've been doing marketing for my life, but I really, really liked how it's a quick reference guide. So, I recognize I need to do a survey, right? And so what questions do I come up with? Things like that. So it was just so wonderful that I can just open that book. It gets me brainstorming right away. So thank you for this guide. I'm going to have it permanently in my office so I can just have it right there. So thank you.
Oh, good. Thanks. Yes. And I hope if anybody has any questions too, if you want me to clarify on anything, I'd be happy to. I'm sure it was also kind of obvious that I'm passionate about certain topics like fine forgiveness and email marketing and kind of overcoming the obstacles to doing that. And I will say I recently actually have sort of gotten a new client in Canada. So now I'm like pushing the envelope up there to try to get them to do more email marketing, because that is, they have a different set of laws called CASL that doesn't actually prevent them from doing marketing, but have been interpreted sort of in a more conservative way. So anyway, and so I think it was Kathy, your publication recently had an article on that, right? And I was so glad because it came right at the right time. So I hope for all of you, I was just thinking about that while you were talking, when you were saying to think about the easy reference guide, if, for example, email marketing is something you want to do, hopefully you can just skip, like you said, skip ahead to that section, especially if you have to make a case for it, if there's some resistance at your library to that.
I like the, we are just about fine free. So we're very happy to be just about fine free. I'm just waiting for our board of directors to permanently make that the case. So that was very helpful. That was very useful, and it's going to be helpful in trying to get them over this last vote to do that. The other thing another piece that I really liked was the auto expiring library cards, and the looking at the with your significant other, looking at people that were leaving the county and trying to see was that really that much of a big deal. I thought that math that you put in there was so cool. So is there anybody that one thing that that Cordelia and I were talking about is, has anybody been able to implement some of the strategies already, or does anybody have plans right now to implement anything specifically that you saw in the book? Aaron?
My library just got Savannah with the Orange Boy. And so we're getting ready to do our first targeted email campaign. We've been doing an opt-in branch specific newsletter that has mixed results. So we have a few ideas, but we haven't done our first one yet. Every time we send the test emails out to each other and stuff. And so we're meeting with them again to figure out what we want our opening message to be and to which audience. So this book is definitely, I'm about halfway through. I wasn't able to finish it before today, but it's definitely helping me make that decision. But any recommendations from anybody or tips or experiences are welcome. We're real excited.
Yeah, switching from opt-in to opt-out is a game changer. And obviously, I use Savannah because I've talked about it in the book, but I have had clients even who use other tools who've switched from opt-in to opt-out. And it's just been a lifesaver for them, especially during the pandemic. Like I had one client, and this came after the book, so I couldn't write about it, who they had been meeting resistance about switching to the opt-out model. And so they had, at the start of the pandemic, about 8,000 people in their database, but they had about 80,000 active customers. And so we were in the process of advocating with their library director to get him to allow them to put all of the 80,000 active cardholders, so not all of their cardholders, but people who'd used the library in the last 3 years, to put that into their database for email marketing. And then when the pandemic happened, and because we'd sort of laid that groundwork, he allowed them, because literally they had no other way to communicate now with their customers about digital offerings, because they had to close their branches. And so they were able to flip that switch and go to the 80,000. And so it was just I was so happy to see that recommendation implemented, but also just to see them be able to reach their customers, because ultimately that's what it's all about, right?
Yeah, that was a big deal. Yeah, the pandemic, that was one of those interesting outputs, was that, suddenly we have no other way to connect with anybody. So what are we going to do? We got to get them somehow. So was there something else? I thought I might have seen somebody else who had a hand up.
Donna?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. When I hired I hired into my district about 6 months before the pandemic. And when I hired in, I was given this email newsletter that was an opt-in, and I was told that I could not add everybody because another area library had tried to do an opt-out email newsletter. And rather than sending it to all of their card holders, they had sent it to everyone in Rails, which is like all of 2/3 of Northern Illinois. It was like every card holder at every library, everywhere.
Secretly, I think that's kind of a cool accident, but I mean, no.
Yeah. So I was told I absolutely could not do that. And then when the pandemic hit, I'm like, So like overnight, we went from having like 82 people on our email mailing list to having 3,900. So
I love it.
Nice.
I love it.
Since I did it, I've had less than 300 people opt out. So
Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm
Oh, sorry. It's such a small percentage. It's like less than 1% that actually unsubscribe, you know. And your story about Rails reminded me of like a like when my neighbor, you know, backing out of her garage accidentally ripped off her mirrors on her car. My ex-husband for months didn't trust me to back out of the garage. And I'm like, I have not ripped any mirrors off of my car. And it's like your example with the Rails is like, just because one person made a mistake, now it's like, oh no, we can't let anybody do this anymore. But there's no logic to that at all. So
Right. That's so funny.
I'm so glad you were able to do it.
Yeah. Anybody else who else has something that they're implement? I can't see the name, Rushing last name.
Hi, Erin
Oh,
Rushing.
Erin, other Erin.
Hi.
Hey, Erin.
I really I'm also only halfway through, I'm sorry to admit, but I thoroughly enjoyed it so far. And in particular, I had created about a year ago a hypothetical communications plan for our library, and I was so pleased to see that it followed your template. And I'm so excited to have this example to be like, look, this is actually how you do it. And in particular, I was really struck by a small detail, which is the way that you referred to other communication and marketing plans as supplemental plans. I thought that was such a small but clever way of, you know, instilling that hierarchy between the two things. I thought that was great. So anyway, thank you for that. It is very, I agree with others that it's like a toolkit. It's a nice, succinct toolkit of things to use. So thank you.
I have to agree with Erin that I also found the book validating in some ways, because my position when I started, I was brand new, brand new position. They really kind of didn't know what they wanted. They just knew they needed a marketing person. And so I've now been here 5 years and I'm still defining that role. And also in that process, I think all of you have felt like I am banging my head against the wall. Nothing is happening. And so when I read your book, it's like, oh my gosh, of these 5 things, I have actually accomplished 4 out of 5, and I'm currently working on the 5th. So yes. So thank you for the validation.
That's awesome.
Yes, that was
good.
another goal, was validating the good work, definitely.
Kathy?
Hi there. Hi, everyone. I just wanted to go back to Donna for a second, who was not allowed to use addresses for email marketing and then finally was allowed. Did you ever get any satisfaction? Did any administrators or naysayers come back later and say, this really did work. This was a great thing?
Not so much that, but I have it set up. Our assistant director set up an automated system so that every new card holder, their email address gets sent to me once a month, and they automatically just go right on the list. So there is some support there. My biggest challenge right now is the fact that I hired in at the beginning of September 2019. Before I hired in, this position did not exist. And our director was doing all of the marketing and all of the, all the promotions. There was no continuity. There was not a style guide. There was, nothing. And so I came in and I'm starting literally from scratch on doing all of this stuff. And, things like, there are going to be times where by virtue of my position, I need to work remotely. But members of our board think if you're not sitting at your desk in the building, you can't be working. So, and it's just, there are so many little teeny tiny baby steps that I'm fighting. It's pick your battle for today. And then
All right. That's right.
Sorry for your frustration there, but I'm very glad for your success. And
Yeah.
even if they didn't come back and say, oh gosh, we were wrong, which I figured they wouldn't, the fact that they're feeding you all the new addresses now, I think is pretty good validation that you did good. So very good.
It's a great signal. Yeah. It's good to be getting that kind of support, and yeah, surely it'll grow. Yeah, it's excellent. So that, and that kind of brings us to something else that Cordelia had mentioned is, what do you think some of the biggest challenges that there are, or impediments for implementing some of these strategies? Or, I guess, Cordelia, also, we're fortunate to have her here, a celebrated consultant. So if you got challenges that you want to ask about, go ahead, and who has some challenges or things that they want to talk about? Stacy.
Hello, Cordelia. I have not read your book yet, but I'm the one that was like, saw your webinar and was like, we have to have her. So the webinar on, so I've been trying to put into place the like hub and spoke, kind of thought process. Unfortunately, I'm not like on the social media team. I'm not on, I'm coming in as an instruction librarian, and I work with the public librarians, and I work with the instruction team, but I'm not like higher up. And they're rewriting our entire process because our head stepped down, a head of marketing within the library, who was like our liaison between the university. So now we have things where they want a 6-month plan of what programs are coming up, so that they can put it like on a spreadsheet and then share that with the university. But there tends to be a lot of internal conflict between the public library teams and the academic teams, where like my programs, I'm trying to make them for everybody. Like, I don't care who comes, but other times they're like, well, if the public comes to this one, then we have these other things we have to change around. So we just want to make it academic to make it easier. So it doesn't need to be on the spreadsheet. And I was like, well, that's not going to give the marketing team any idea of like how they could play with this, how they can make connections and collaborations across the university and across the public library. Obviously, my situation is a little unique as working at a joint use library, but I still see a lot of, implications for the fact that if you are going to collect this information, you might as well collect all the programs and then tag them, label them out, and then say, look, we think these are the priority ones because they're definitely public, but these are the other ones that are happening in the background through these other units. Instead of saying, okay, this is half of spreadsheet and the rest of the stuff you guys don't need to know about. And I'm not in the decision chair, but I would like very much to figure out the best ways of like saying, well, I think it's okay for us to share this information with the team, particularly as they're working out this brand new marketing process where it goes up through the chain of command, goes to the head of the library, who then shares it with these different other people, and then it gets sent over to the university marketing team, and then gets sent over to the Broward County, like other teams. It's a little crazy.
That does sound complex, but I agree with you. I think you need all the information. And one thing we used to say in our department was we felt like, and most of the time it was true, that we actually were the one department in the whole library system that knew everything that was going on everywhere. And I'm sure you guys experienced that too, that things get a little siloed. And we talk about that a little bit in some of my webinars, where nobody necessarily knows everything's going on at the library, but marketing does, because people are constantly pinging us about different things. And so we develop a more global view of everything, especially if you have multiple locations, versus the folks who are just thinking about their branch or their department or just collections or just this or that. And so I do think it's valuable to have everything in, like you said, in that spreadsheet. And then the other thing too is that planning is often very siloed, like you're describing, where somebody's planning a big festival a week away from somebody else planning a big festival, or, launching a new service, or there's going to be a maintenance outage on, this vendor or whatever it may be. Looking at all those things together helps you then communicate those things to your customers in a way that makes it seem like you know what's going on. And as you know, sometimes in marketing, you're wordsmithing it to make it seem like your library planned it that way, but actually they didn't.
Yeah.
So I do think marketing can play a really important role in encouraging just what you're talking about: good comprehensive planning, stepping out of silos, sharing information across the board. Because also the other issue you can have is competing with yourselves when people are, doing their planning separately and are, trying to accomplish the same thing. And it's a resource drain too.
I think we only have like 3 Zoom webinar accounts, so if you're going to do a lockdown event where nobody's allowed to comment or anything, then they tend to give those accounts to only the big events, right? And then if you're planning other types of events, then you have to do just regular Zoom, and then you have to plan if you have a moderator or if you don't have a moderator. So I got pulled into the Happy Hobby series, and they were like, oh, we're going to cap it at 50 people. And I said, why cap it? If we market it out, I have students that want to do hobbies. I can't just teach them academic stuff. I got to teach them fun stuff. So yeah, I really appreciate, and I can't wait to dig into the book.
That's great.
Stacy, you were talking. Oh, you're talking about trying to get further reach. Last year, I really took advantage of the pandemic and made a whole bunch of changes to our summer reading program. And so now, we're getting ready to launch enrollment for this year's program. You don't have to have a library card in order to participate. You don't have to read library books. You can read whatever you have access to. If reading on a Kindle or listening to an audiobook is the way you want to go, that counts too. And the participation rates, even in the middle of the pandemic last year, were better than they had ever been before. So it pays off sometimes to just say, better to ask forgiveness than permission.
That's great.
Amen. I love it.
That's excellent.
I think that that we're really pushing it out. Us as the librarians are really pushing it out. I think where some of the bottlenecking is happening is maybe middle management, where they're like, this is a workshop for this, and this is how it has to be developed. But when I and my colleagues collaborate with our public services librarians, we are coming up with really amazing ideas. And I'm like, we need to reach out. These are being marketed. The Facebook groups are being marketed only to public. You should be marketing out to the graduate students who have families. That will, but our numbers are off the chart for public programming. It's the academic program that really needs the boost in the numbers. And so I'm always trying to come up with ways of getting students to understand this, you're going to get something out of this that's going to help you do better. But then I'm also trying to get them to come to me so that I can share the fun stuff with them, so that they have a full scope of the library and they're not just always in that academic kind of silo, which I feel that sometimes we're very much being pushed into that way, and I don't think that way. But thank you everyone for the comments. I'm always open to great ideas.
One thing I've noticed with academic libraries, not to go down too much of a rabbit hole, but is that generally speaking, and I can't speak for your organization, but they have great foot traffic. And the bigger problem is, so there's students in the library doing stuff all the time, but the problem is educating them about other services that they may not know about and getting them to use those as well, because they may only be using 10% of what your library could help them with. And so, I also agree with what you're saying about don't make the customers jump through hoops to participate in the program by capping it or limiting your audience. Like the more the merrier, right? Unless there's some compelling reason not to. But I in person, I used to encourage the academic library that I'm on the board for to just like really think outside the box with programs and do things like drop-ins or just a table out on the floor, because those kind of things can, take advantage of that foot traffic that's already there, rather than trying to maybe change their behavior to be more like a traditional library program where they put it on their calendar and show up at a certain time. So those are some of my thoughts about that.
Yeah, that's cool. Aaron A., I think you had something. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I just think the metaphor for like my experience was I wanted to put like a really fun book set up on the second floor, which is where our reference desk is. First floor is public services, where it's the children's and the public section and all the videos and everything. And they were like, well, on the second floor, we have the books that our faculty members have written. I said, honestly, that's boring. And we have a lot of public patrons that come up to the second floor to use our computer center. So they're not all trapped on the first floor. They move between the floors, same as the students. I said, if I were a student, the last thing I would be attracted to is like a bunch of like gray books about like, content analysis or like sexual trauma. Like all our faculty members are psychology faculty members, right? I said, why can't we put something fun on the second floor? They're like, if the faculty book display is successful and gets traffic, you can put together the fun display. And I was like,
that doesn't make any sense.
That is completely illogical. So I think that's like the metaphor for my experience. Anytime something goes down the wrong marketing path, it's like, if the least possible success plan works, then you're going to get to do the fun stuff. And so, I mean, it flummoxed me. I'm like, I don't know if anybody ever has the same experience with, like that or not, or if it's just me being super unique, but that's my metaphor. Anytime I think back to like, okay, how can I make this work? Anyway, next person. I've talked enough. Thanks.
No, that's great. No, I mean, I think Cordelia from the book, I would say, I mean, it's going back to that, creating the strategy and creating that kind of central message and that central thing that's going to help guide a lot of that stuff. I mean, that was definitely what I thought was really cool with the book was to take the time and, like you said, kind of step off the hamster wheel and do some of that stuff that can make a big difference. So, yeah, who else has a comment, question? Brianna. Oh, you're muted there. There you are.
Sorry. I was actually going to say, so, naturally, I loved the book for myself and for all the ways I can apply it to my work. But I also have a new director coming in, and reading especially the advocacy chapter. I really appreciate your basically openness with everything that you went, everything that you kind of experienced with Charlotte Mecklenburg, to also sort of iterate that advocacy, especially on the local level, is a year-round process, and it's not a thing to start doing in the moment you need it the most. It's the thing to do as like groundwork all along the way. And I feel very fortunate that right now we're in a position of not having to do a lot. So it's the great opportunity to start sort of, transitioning her into having, regular meetings, regular conversations, and that, it ties nicely with storytelling, but that it is something more. It's good to have those back pocket stories, but that it really is kind of a level up. It's not just, not just the stories that you would use for sort of everyday promotion or everyday marketing, but that it's kind of being able to dig deeper. And I thought that was a great chapter, and I plan to kind of slide it into her desk at some point. So thank you for that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think the story that you're talking about, really, when it comes to advocacy, whatever type of advocacy you're doing, is the story of why your library is a good investment, right? I mean, that sounds kind of mercenary, but it's true, because if they're giving you funding, and this also can translate to donors as well, though it's a slightly different approach, private funding donors, but your public funders are donors too. And again, in my sharing my experience, we didn't think of it that way until we had the big funding crisis. And I remember meeting with the marketing communications people from a neighboring county during that time who we were trying to learn from. And they were like, you guys raise a lot more money than we do, but we view our most important fundraising effort is having a good relationship with our county manager. And that was a real lesson learned for me of like, yes, we do a lot of fundraising, meaning at the time we were raising like several $100,000 a year, which was more than this other library system, but we were getting tens of millions of dollars a year from the county. And without that, no amount of, Friends of the Library book sales was going to make up that difference. And so it was a good learning lesson for us. But I know many libraries are structured in different ways and funded in different ways. So I'd be curious to know if there was anyone where you have like a unique funding situation that's different from the one I experienced, where do some of these strategies still apply, or do you feel like you have to use kind of a different approach?
Well, I had with our summer reading program last year, we did not solicit any donations from anybody for anything. And what we did, we did out of our budget and just called it a moment. This year, I was given a list of about 40 places throughout our entire county where the previous people who had run the SRP had sent donation requests. I'm like, okay, wait a minute. We're part of a metropolitan area that's over 400,000 people, and you sent donation requests 2 years ago to this one-page list of people. And that makes no sense.
Yeah.
And I sent out 150 letters, and already we have gotten, several $100s in cash donations from banks and places like that. We have gotten several $100s in prize donations, and everybody's like, well, we've never gotten anything like this before. And I'm like, you've never asked before.
And Donna, sometimes the awareness that you're generating is worth even more than the money. So, good for you, because now if they write a check, they now have a different attitude about the library that has value too.
Well, and the one thing I pointed out in my letter was, last year we did not ask you for anything. We went out and bought gift cards from our community partners to help support their businesses. Now we're back. Now's your chance to become a partner with us. And one of the things that I'm doing is making sure I have all of the logos from all of the people who donate, so that we can do sponsor spotlights on social media and link to their stuff and just say, hey, these are the people who are supporting this program, and go and give them your business as well.
Yeah, you have to ask. People aren't just going to hand you money. Cordelia, one thing about the advocacy and connecting with your county managers, and something that I've found is that some of the city council people, for us, it's difficult to get any other time. So with real limited time, is there what are some of the best ways to kind of catch them? Is it through their assistants? Is it through, what kind of things have you found to catch, sort of real busy city people, city elected officials that have maybe even have other jobs besides and things?
Yeah, so a couple ideas around that. One is, of course, make sure they're getting your communications. Your board can be a great asset, because at least at my library, our board were the movers and shakers. And a lot of them knew these people by first name and could get to them better than like we could.
Yeah.
And so at times when it was really important, and obviously you can't do this all the time because board time is limited, but we would actually have we would put in the effort to do a little matchmaking game. This board member with this county commissioner, this board member, and then invite that board member to invite that county commissioner out for coffee, not to ask for anything, but just get to know you. And we'd give them some basic talking points of like, did you know this about the library? And did you know this? Again, a non-ask, just an awareness meeting. Another kind of fun thing that I did, and because we did have Savannah, was I looked at every single one to see if they had a library card.
Right,
and if they didn't, I would have my CEO send them a note with a pre-activated library card that we created for them. And our staff was resistant to this idea in the beginning because, you know, there's rules and how it has to be.
Right.
And we just kind of pushed it through and we're like, we're doing this. So we would send them a pre-activated library card and encourage them to use it. Or if they had a library card, sometimes it was expired because of our own stupid policy. And I would go in and have it unexpired. And again, I would have we would reach out with a note letting them know it was unexpired or letting them know it was active. So, you know, having them use the library is a huge, if you can get them to even walk in the door, it changes their perceptions immediately, because at least pre-COVID, you know, our libraries, especially on a weekday afternoon, are usually hopping. And that just can change perceptions of libraries as these dusty, quiet places just to walk into one. So those are some thoughts I had about county commissioners. And we were not funded by our city, but I actually did do city council too, because they're influencers, you know?
Yeah. Our city is our county, so that's where it copies for us. But no, that's great. Those are great ideas. What other comments or questions or anything else that anybody has? Something else to think about is how is your library leadership supporting good marketing and communications? Are you having challenges with that? You know, anybody have any questions or suggestions? I see some heads nodding. Amanda, anybody have any questions or suggestions about that?
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay. One thing I have a question about is posting trends. So I kind of did an ask one time and I posted a lot of Bernie Sanders stuff. So we did really good. We reached over 20,000 people in a couple days organically, and it went over very, very, very well with everybody. We gained tons of followers. I was told to never do it again. Libraries don't post fluff. How do I get around that?
Well, that's an interesting one, because I've never heard that as a fluff issue. I know with many libraries, you can't post anything that is tied to a specific political party or political candidate. So I'm actually surprised that that wasn't the issue. You mean
Bernie
it was just him sitting with his mittens, and we would say like, can't wait to see you when we're open again, but we didn't post anything about him or his party or anything. It was just him sitting in a chair.
Oh yeah. No, I love trends. In fact, one of my webinars I do on social media, and if any of you are in North Carolina, I'm doing it this Thursday. Oh gosh, I got to get that ready. But anyway, I talk about trending topics as a source of content, because it can't just be all about you all the time. I mean, social media is a two-way conversation, and tapping into what your audiences are also interested in is another way to engage with them and to show them that you share, you know, values, interests, et cetera, with them. So one thing we would do, we had BiblioCommons, and if there was a beloved celebrity in the news, say they had done something or won an award or had passed away, we would create a list in BiblioCommons of their materials in the catalog and then create social media posts around that. So I remember when Prince passed away, and everybody, especially of my generation, was devastated. We had, you know, a lot of his music on Hoopla, and we wanted people to know that. And so we did that. So that was an example of a trending topic. It's like not a traditional library thing, but people were interested. And of course, when beloved authors, you know, were in the news, it was an easier sell. But yeah, and we would do kind of silly memes and stuff like that. And even I had one staff member who just would do a brilliant thing where on Friday, she'd post like a bookish picture and just say, it's the weekend, what are you reading? Like literally, that's all she would do. And we get so many people responding, and then they'd be talking to each other. So that was like so easy, but it's, again, it's not just the library pushing out information about the library, it's us listening. So I always thought that was really great.
We have a plastic dinosaur that someone left at the library. It sat there for a month or two. And then the staff started decorating the dinosaur and no one came back for it. And so actually just before the library shut down, we did a naming contest, and his name is Thesaurus Rex. And he is always getting into things. We just like post pictures of, sometimes he's doing kind of library stuff. And recently our director took him to a Phillies game and he went on a field trip. And people love Thesaurus Rex. One of my coworkers, she was making a video about DVDs, and Thesaurus Rex was just like in the video a couple of times, and she was showing the video to her daughter, and her daughter was like, "There's Thesaurus Rex." And so like people love this like random dinosaur. I probably get the most engagement on posts about Thesaurus Rex, and then that boosts people's engagement with all the other programs and whatnot. So really anything that gets people to like or comment keeps the library in their feed. Like that's how it works.
Yeah, I love this example. And I would say what you talking about, it got me thinking about the previous example of them calling it fluff. And I would say the way to get around the fluff argument is to tie it back to your strategy. So if you have a strategy of we want to grow our audience on social media, and I even would encourage you to like set a goal, like we want to increase engagement by 5% this year, or increase followers to reach this milestone. If you have a goal like that and you share that within your organization, then you can pitch these ideas as a way to increase engagement, and therefore, tying back to a larger goal and helping them understand that when we increase engagement, we broaden our audience, which is that we then can tell them about our programs and services and how it all ties back. And so my BiblioCommons example was a little easier sell because we were literally linking to things in the collection, which of course promotes circulation, but even things like Thesaurus Rex, which is such a cute example. I'm going to write that down too, if you don't mind. But anyway, accomplishes much the same thing. So I totally agree with you on that one. And it is a hard sell, but again, if you can point to a strategy, it makes it a little easier.
And in October, we're going to do a contest where different age groups can design a like logo or picture of Thesaurus Rex, and then people can buy merch, like t-shirts or whatever. So it's just, community engagement is a really important component.
That's great.
Yeah, and trending topics, in your community too. Obviously, I gave an example of national ones, but issues that are important in your community or important geographical sites, or things like community pride types of things are other examples that you could tie into as well.
Yeah.
I thought it was really,
Rachel?
Sorry, go ahead, Chris.
No, go.
I thought it was inspiring, Angela, that you said you were going to sell merch, because that's something that I have never, I'm very lucky where I'm in a library district that's funded separately from the county and the city. We're independent. So we have a good setup, which is awesome. But I also think it makes us like very cautious about, I obviously I don't want to charge for anything, but I also think it like builds value. Like there are certain things like you can't always give away like a bunch of t-shirts or a bunch of bags. It's cost prohibitive. And I think people would love to like have a reusable grocery bag from the library. Like they would feel so proud. I think it'll have to be Ethel, our friends group someday, but I don't know that they want to go in that direction. So I'm just so proud of you that you have merch. That sounds so cool.
It's awesome.
Yeah. And I think nowadays there are ways you can offer merch without a huge amount of like upfront costs. Like in the old days, like my library in my first tenure there, back in the early 2000s, like we overdid it on merch. We had so much. And I literally would spend days like in the basement cleaning out like old t-shirts, old mugs, old stuff. And I was like, never again with merch. But fast forward to today, like I think merch is a great way to engage, especially if you have a brand that people love, which, that makes a big difference. And then there are some low cost ways to like, print those kind of things on demand where it's not a huge overhead in a basement full of rotting t-shirts, sadly.
Oh, yeah. Cordelia, this has been great. Thank you so much. We have just a couple minutes left. Thank you, everybody, for your questions and contributions. Don't go away. You might win a book. Cordelia, anything you got coming up? Anything we can look forward to? Anywhere we can see you? Any conferences coming? What you got going on?
I will just refer you to my website, CordeliaAndersonAPR.com. I can post it in there. That's where my schedule is. I have several webinars and things coming up. I just agreed to do a conference in August from Overdrive, so that'll be on there soon. And, but I just love stuff like this. So if anybody knows of a thing and you need me or you want me to come and talk, I'm happy to do it. But yeah, and I have a webinar next month I'm doing for Niche Academy, that's free as well. But yeah, just go to my website. It's all there. And I have my blog and my little newsletter. You can sign up for that, but, I love hearing great examples and stuff too, because I work that into my training. I find like the more examples people share, the better, the more attainable it feels sometimes. So.
That's great. Well, so yeah, we'll definitely check you out there. I will publish this video and so people can watch it that didn't get to see the whole thing or want to watch it again. I'll make sure to somehow figure out how to include the chat comments because there's awesome chat comments. So last, what we do is whoever stayed to the end gets a chance at winning a book. Brianna won the book last time, and Brianna generously volunteered to pay for this month's book selection. So we have 23 people other than Cordelia and I in the room. So Cordelia, pick a number between 1 and 23.
17.
17. Oh man. All right, let's see. 5, 10, 15, 16, 17. Lily Stevenson. Lily.
Yay.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations. So Lily, I will get with you on the through Facebook. You're on our Facebook group, right? So I'll get with you on Facebook and we'll get it all set up. The book for next month is the one-page marketing plan. So you can see that on the site. But Cordelia, thank you again. Really appreciate you taking the time to do this, and so glad to have you in the book club and look forward to seeing you again.
I look forward to seeing all of you again too. Hopefully I can come back for future meetings. It doesn't always have to be my book.
We'd love to have you and everybody for every meeting. So tell your friends. Thanks, everybody.